Hi guys, and welcome back to our channel Make That Change, where Anastasia and I share our experience on how to arrive, excel and thrive in Canada. And today we will talk about some things in Canada that seem to be unreasonably expensive.
Both Anna and I come from Russia, and when we came to Canada for the first time, there was a number of things that shocked us. Different culture, different mentality, society, different behaviors. And for the most part, those things were pleasant surprises for us. But there were some things that we've learned were outrageously unreasonable. And prices was one of them. There are certain things that are a lot more expensive than in Russia or even the rest of Europe.
Exactly. And why is it that Canada is one of the most economically advanced countries in the whole world, yet some prices scream the opposite? That's why today we decided to discuss top 5 things that shocked us the most in Canada in terms of prices, and we will try to answer the question of why are those things so expensive.
So Anna, you're still pretty fresh in Canada. It's just been under 3 years for you. What was that one very first thing that shocked you in terms of being unreasonably expensive in Canada?
Cell phone and internet was one of the things that shocked me the most in Canada, because in Russia I used to pay just $4 for unlimited LTE cell phone connection and around $20 for cable and internet. So when I learned that in Canada I would have to pay at least $23 for just cell phone connection in Canada, I was a little bit disappointed. And I was even more disappointed when I realized that I would have to pay additional cost to have internet data, which will go around $10 per 1 gigabyte of data. And the same thing goes for internet. Did you know that Canadian providers started offering unlimited internet only 2 years ago in 2019? It's ridiculous. And prior to 2019, you had to plan ahead how many YouTube videos or Netflix episodes you're planning to watch this month.
And why is that? Well, the 3 biggest Canadian wireless companies, Bell, Telus and Rogers, control 90% of the wireless market, so they have the right to charge higher prices because there's simply no competition in Canada. What about the foreign investors, you might ask? Well, the Canadian telecommunications law restricts foreign investments into Canadian telco companies. So all in all, we get high barriers for entry, restricted foreign investments, limited access to wireless infrastructure, and a history of acquisitions and mergers. So what that means is that telco companies can charge us whatever they want and get away with it because they know that the consumers will still pay those higher prices.
I was also considering getting a car to explore the province I moved in Canada. But then I found out about the costs associated with owning a car in Canada, especially car insurance. So car insurance in Canada is mandatory and is usually provided by private companies, and the specific insurance requirements depend from province to province. This infographic shows the average insurance premiums you are expected to pay in Canada, and you can see that British Columbia and Ontario are top of the list, while the land of Francophones, Quebec, is at the bottom of the list. The reason the insurance in Quebec is the cheapest is because it mandates you the less coverage and protection than other provinces in Canada. The exact amount you are going to pay depends on many factors, such as your age. The younger you are, the more you are going to pay, the type of car you drive, your driving record, and how often you drive. In Ontario, for instance, Anastasia has 10 years of driving experience and she is paying around $200 a month. Overall, if we take the top 3 costless provinces for auto insurance, that puts Canada into top 5 most expensive insurance coverages among USA, Germany and Australia.
And why is that? Well, according to several resources, weather is one of the big culprits for higher insurance costs. Things like storms, tornadoes, floods, fires, and so on and so forth result into billions of dollars of insurance claims year over year in Canada. So this is a real-life video made in Montreal a couple of years ago. And unfortunately, things like that happen every now and then in Montreal. It's not uncommon for roads to turn into an ice rink where it's impossible to brake. Let alone, some people don't even switch to winter tires even though it's mandated by the law. And unfortunately, the weather patterns are getting more and more severe year over year due to the general world's climate change. And that's no good news for insurance premiums. The second stated reason for high insurance costs is apparently fraud. A lot of insurance companies are actually losing money. Fraud happens when someone deceives the insurance company in order to get a financial gain. So what happens aside from rising insurance costs? Well, it's getting harder and harder to get payouts for the insurance claims that you're actually entitled to, because they are trying to combat fraud. So when you do have a real claim to make, you will get buried in phone calls and bureaucracy and documents just to get what you are actually entitled for. All in all, dealing with insurance companies is not pleasant. And it's also surely not pleasant for the consumer to take on the higher insurance costs just because of the fraud that's a result of a flawed insurance system in the first place.
Guys, this one is painful. Traveling in Canada is expensive. Traveling within Canada is expensive. Traveling outside of Canada is very expensive. It's just misery. If you've ever been to Europe and you've taken €20 train or €10 flight to another European country, you would cry seeing prices between two cities in Canada. So for example, if you take a flight from Toronto to Montreal, which is just an hour flight, it will cost you around $300. And if you take a train, which is around 6 hours, it will cost you around $100. You know, sometimes it's cheaper to fly to Las Vegas or Miami in the States than to travel within Canada. If you want to travel outside of Canada, and for instance, if you want to take a flight to Central America, be prepared to pay at least $600. And if you want to fly to South America or to Europe, it'll cost you at least around $800. It's the same amount you'll have to pay if you want to travel from coast to coast within Canada.
And why is that? Well, for those of you who have done economics in school, you know that competition drives prices down. And similarly to the phone and the internet situation, competition in Canada doesn't really exist. Canada only has two major airlines, Air Canada and WestJet, so no one is incentivized to reduce prices for travel. And apart from competition, rent and airport taxes, along with the air service fees, are significantly higher in Canada. All that is due to a smaller population, smaller operating volumes, large spread of cities, and not great infrastructure. Other things like labor costs and fuel costs are also a factor.
Let's talk about the next item on our list, which is ridiculously expensive, but we think it's rightfully so: alcohol and cigarettes. If you go into a local liquor store or convenience store, you'd probably be shocked to pay around $20 for a pack of cigarettes and around $20 to $50 for a bottle of good wine. And this is something I've seen many Europeans complain about a lot. In addition to that, you would have to pay around $40 or more for some decent quality spirit, like gin or whiskey. Canada tightly controls where you can buy alcohol, how much you'll have to pay, and even the time of the day when you can buy alcohol. For instance, hard liquor can only be bought in a specialized government-regulated stores. For instance, SAQ in Quebec or LCBO in Ontario. As for beer or wine, you can generally buy it in a regular convenience store or grocery store. Generally to date, Canada has one of the highest liquor taxes in the world. For instance, our liquor prices are almost twice as high as those in the United States. When you buy alcohol in Canada, as a consumer, you have to pay 3 types of tax: spirits basic tax, volume tax, and environmental tax. The overall taxation system is very complex. It depends on the province where you buy alcohol, as well as the type of alcohol you buy. Here is an example of markups Ontario consumers end up paying on different alcohol. You can see that the markup on vodka and rum is almost 50% of the actual price. That's not to mention regular taxes.
Why is that? Prices of alcohol in Canada are controlled by the Excise Tax Act, and the primary consideration for these regulations is health and alcoholism in Canada. Canada considers alcohol price and taxes one of the most important leverages in Canada to combat alcohol consumption and the harms associated with that consumption, things like drunk driving, domestic abuse, and effectively cancer. And it might just be effective. There's been multiple studies made that show that higher alcohol prices correlate with lower alcohol consumption in countries. You can also notice that lower volume alcohol drinks like beer or wine has a lower tax than other drinks that have a higher volume of alcohol like gin, whiskey or vodka. That is another way for the Canadian government to entice the Canadian population to turn to lower volume of alcohol drinks. It is believed that individuals who drink to excess cost the healthcare system more in long-term healthcare costs. And that means that raised taxes on alcohol is partially offsetting the healthcare costs. And since we have public healthcare in Canada, and since alcohol abuse is bad for a person's health, people who drink cost the system more money. And therefore, those people should have to pay for it with higher prices on alcohol.
Next up, food and groceries. Didn't expect that one, eh? So you've already heard that you would have to pay around 20 to 50 bucks for a good bottle of wine. Now how about 1 liter of milk for $3? Or 12 eggs for $4? Or 1 kilogram of chicken fillet for $14? Let's compare prices between Toronto and Chicago. Those two cities are somewhat similar in climate, population and location. We can see that the prices are close. But there is one thing we must pay attention to. The salary in Chicago is more than 40% higher. And there is even no point comparing food prices to Central and South American countries, which are actually main importers of fruit and vegetables in Canada. Oh man, I envy those countries so much. They have tasty and fresh fruit for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Fruits, vegetables, nuts and coffee are usually imported from South and Central America, while the United States usually export, surprise, surprise, unhealthy processed foods. I've heard many people who come from Europe or South America complaining about how tasteless food is in Canada, and we will explain why very shortly. All in all, even though some food prices seem to be similar to those in other cities or countries, here in Canada it seems to be significantly expensive, especially relative to your monthly income.
And why is that? First of all, it has to do a lot with the environment, agriculture and farming. One of the main reasons why some of the foods in Canada are so expensive is the weather patterns and the general climate change. There's been a rise in wildfires, droughts, floods and heat waves in Canada over the last couple of years, and that impacts the crops and farming, reducing the amount of harvest that they get and driving the prices up as a result. The other reason why food prices are so high in Canada is geography. The size of Canada is almost like its blessing and its curse. Just recently, there was a viral TikTok video from someone from Nunavut where she's exposed the abnormally high prices for some of the food items. Things like the tin foil, which cost around 70 bucks, or the bag of chips that was $33. That's just insane. The reason for such high prices is simply because some remote regions are really hard to get to and deliver food. And if we look generally in Canada, especially the southern Canada close to the US border, the food still has to travel either domestically or internationally quite long distances. So the price that we end up paying for food is reflecting of the traveling costs and the distances. And frankly, the traveling costs are also affecting the quality of the food that we receive into our tables. In order to reduce some of the distance traveled, Canada imports some fruits and vegetables from the States. But unfortunately, a lot of such food comes to Canada fairly tasteless because most of the foods there are genetically modified to accelerate its life cycle and preserve its freshness. Another reason why food prices are so high, specifically for poultry and dairy, is the government-imposed restrictions. Canadian government is a little bit of a control freak. Similarly to how they handle the doctor's supply in Canada, Canada has imposed supply management programs to control the produce of poultry and dairy. The purpose of these programs is to control the amount of poultry and dairy produced to make sure that all the farmers and producers are able to sell all of what they produce. These government-imposed quotas limit the amount of products that the farmers can produce, which are again driving the prices for that produce up. These quotas cause a limited supply, which in turn increases the price of products we pay for, making it more expensive than it would have been if there were allowed to be more more food products circulating in the economy. And last but not least, it's the fluctuating dollar exchange rate. Since Canada imports a lot of different types of foods, it has to purchase foods in the currency of the selling country. And that means that the fluctuation in currency rates has a huge impact on the prices that the consumers end up paying.
So let's sum all explanations up. Well, first of all, Canada is the second largest country in the whole world, with a tiny population, which is spread along the border with the United States. This has a huge impact on overall cost and distribution of infrastructure in the country. Secondly, we all know that Canada has a relatively cold climate in general. This has a huge impact on the cost of maintenance of infrastructure and some industries, such as agriculture. Last but not least, monopolies. Lack of competition and government limitations allow big companies in Canada to dominate the market and set the costs as high as they want. As a result, we as consumers have to pay more because of all those shortcomings that Canada has. Well, we cannot change the climate, and we definitely should not make Canada a smaller country, but we can somewhat control the population. And actually, that is why immigration makes up to 80% of population growth in Canada. Because the more people we have, the more businesses, services and products we have in the country, which creates higher competition and brings down the prices.
There is one more thing that we think is very, very expensive, especially in bigger cities in Canada. But we're not going to talk about it in this video, because we're making a whole separate video about that. So what do you think that is? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll see who has the right guess.
And if you think there is something else that is ridiculously expensive in Canada, please share your thoughts and observations in the comments below.
And if you want to share and exchange your thoughts and observations and experiences about moving to Canada, don't forget to join our Facebook group and subscribe to our newsletter to stay tuned with everything that's happening in Canada.
As usual, please click the like button below and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. This means a lot to us, guys, and we will definitely see you in the next one. Bye, friends!
Take care!